All right. Hello, everybody out there in the chat. Welcome to a Dark Tower Palaver with the ka-tet. So, with me today, I have some very special guests. We have Midworld Mike. Love it. Good
That's
nickname.
great.
How are we doing today, Mike?
Oh man, I first thank you so much for asking me to be a part of this because I know that you and I disagree on how the series goes, but
Yes,
I
we do.
love that we get to talk about these things. That's why I'm just honored that you asked me to be a part of it. Thank you.
That's what it's all about. So, and we also have here Bookish Chaz. Hello, Chaz. Great to see you again.
Hello, Philip. Great to see you as always, my friend. I'm really honored to be part of this as well. I'm a huge fan of the series, and I'm so excited that you're finally done with it and we can talk about it. And oh
Yeah.
boy, yeah.
Yes, everybody here has finished the series, including Ercy from Cersei's Booked. Hello, Ercy. How are you today?
Hey, how are you guys? Again, same as everyone else. I'm so happy to be here. Just excited to talk Tower with you all and tell you guys how much of a mush I was with this series.
Yeah.
How much I cried.
Oh my goodness, the last book.
Oh my gosh, it's
We
so
might have
good.
cried for different reasons, though.
It's possible. That is
I'm just playing that heel role. That's not true at all. I love this series.
Yeah. So, well, that's good. We got a lot to talk about. We are missing one of the ka-tet, unfortunately. Sarah was going to be here, but she wrote me this message here. I'll read it to you guys. You can tell she seemed a little upset. She wrote me this message. It said, "Philip, how dare you make me Jake in the thumbnail? Not only did you make me a little boy, but you made me a little boy with a bad haircut. I will never speak to you again. P.S. Dr. Fantasy is a stupid nickname."
Oh.
Them's fighting words.
Do you think she was upset about that thumbnail?
I think so. Kind of struck a nerve.
Sorry, I had a short afro in mine. So
Yes.
Philip, on another path of the beam, this might have actually been what she wrote.
You never know.
You never know. Well, in fact, she couldn't be here because parental duties. So yeah,
I can
unfortunately,
relate.
she's not here with us. I know it's a busy time of year, especially if you have kids. So we will forgive her, of course, and hope to talk to her someday about the Dark Tower. But here we are. So we're gonna have a good time talking about this series. I do want to start out with a little bit of, for anybody out there in the chat who has not read the series, just sort of a general assessment that we're gonna get heavy into the spoilers as soon as we're done with that. But I just want to get you guys your opinion on the series as a whole. Where do you place it in your best of all time list? Is it in your best of all time list? What's your favorite book in the series as well? And what is your least favorite book in the series? So I think we should start with Chaz. Chaz, are you ready to answer those questions?
I am, yes. Dark Tower is definitely one of my top series of all time. I don't know exactly where I would put it in that ranking. I am probably going to have to do a video at some point talking about my ranking for series I've finished, but it's definitely way up there. One of my favorites. Definitely something I want to reread, and I think it's one of those that will probably get better every time you reread it. I feel like that. So, Wizard and Glass is still probably my favorite book.
Okay.
Good
choice.
Followed closely by the Dark Tower, believe it or not.
Oh, I do.
Dark Tower is a close second in the series for me. But yeah, Wizard and Glass for sure is my favorite. So
okay, cool. We can get into why when we get into spoilers later, because this is a series. We're doing the whole series today, although probably we'll focus mostly on book 7, The Dark Tower. But any book is game here today. So what about you, Ercy? Where do you rank this in your favorite series of all time, fantasy series of all time, whatever? And what's your favorite installment in there? And do you have a least favorite?
Well, see, I read a little bit all over the place. So this is definitely on the top is in terms of like fantasy, but it's like, have I read that much fantasy? Which I have, but I'm all over the place. But A Song of Ice and Fire, Dark Tower, Books of Babel, like all these guys kind of float around the same area. And Dark Tower definitely turned it around for me. When I first read The Gunslinger, I was kind of a little iffy about it. But then when I kept going, I was like, okay, I'm in. This is weird. I'm all for it. But definitely top for me. I'm gonna say Dark Tower. It really pulled on my emotions a lot. I guess a close second would be Wizard and Glass for me, just because of how excellent and well written and beautiful it was. Third would probably be The Wastelands. I really love that installment. Least favorite, I would have to say Song of Susanna, or what's the middle one? It's
The Wastelands or the
no the 4.5.
Wolves of the Kala. Wolves of the Kala.
No, I really like that one too.
She's talking about Wizard and Glass.
Wizard and Glass?
No, the one after Wizard and Glass.
That's Wolves.
That's Wolves, or unless you're counting Wind Through
the
Keyhole.
the last Wind Through the Keyhole. That's the one.
Okay.
I don't know why it like escaped my mind real quick, but that one would probably be my least favorite. It kind of took me a little bit out of it, but either way, the whole series, I really loved it. Like, it's one of my favorites now, and I'm gonna reread it definitely for sure.
All right.
Oh, Joanna.
Awesome. Yeah, we got some lovely people here in the chat. Hello to everybody. It is so great to see you all coming out for this. And Mike, you have a slightly different take from
I do.
The rest of the ka-tet, which is perfectly fine. But you want to tell us about your ranking of the series in general, and then go into your favorite and least favorites.
Well, it's amazing. I get kind of just fingered as this guy who hates this series, which is amazing. If you've heard me talk about it, I think it's quite obvious that this series is very important to me. I put it in my top 5 fantasy series of all time, which is a very, very tough list to make it onto. So that's definitely not the case. I have issues, which we're going to talk about today. But favorite book for me, when I was doing the reread earlier this year, I think I switched from Drawing of the Three to Wastelands, but really it's like flip a coin with those two. That was the point where I was like, this is unlike any other fantasy series I've ever read in my life, especially Drawing of the Three, just how out there it was. So I was like, you can never accuse him of stealing anyone else's ideas. Because that was why when I got this, like, wow, this doesn't feel like any other fantasy series I've ever read. So yeah, it's one of those two books. I don't know. It just kind of depends on the day. Least favorite, Song of Susanna. It's not even close to me. That was the book that took me from like, I can't stop obsessing about this series to I don't even care about the last book, which we'll get into, which has changed a little bit over time. So calm down. But yeah. Easy. Song of Susanna. That's why when Philip said, that's my favorite, I said, no.
No, actually, to quote you, Mike, on my video where I said Song of Susanna is my favorite in the series so far, Mike's only quote, the only thing he said was ugh. That's it.
Well, yeah.
Oh, that's great.
So, yeah, I thought that was I laughed for 5 minutes about that comment.
Always happy to entertain.
Because I was thinking of you, Mike, when I titled that video too, just so you know. So.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm glad that's what made you think of me. I appreciate that.
A wrong take.
Yeah, I'm a little behind here on the comments. This thing is giving me a little trouble here. I'm trying to catch up. So just to give my little take on this, I actually love this series. It is firmly in my top 10, no doubt about it. And as far as my favorites, it is not Song of Susanna anymore. It is Book 7, The Dark Tower. And also just in general, I love, and Ercy was talking about this a bit, I love the weirdness of this series. It's just so different from anything else. Mm-hmm. And Mike is absolutely right that you just never know what to expect from one book to the next. You know, King is doing his own thing here. And yet at the same time, he's bringing all this stuff from wherever he feels like. You've got Star Wars in here. You've got T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. You've got Robert Browning's poem, of course, Child Roll into the Dark Tower. And you got Charlie the Choo Choo. Oh my God. Wow. That's a little scary. Yeah.
I read that to my youngest kid. He loved it. So just sitting it out there.
So creepy.
I also do, like Joanna says here, I do love Song of Susanna as well.
Oh yeah.
I think that's the book that made me love Roland. Actually, before Wizard and Glass, I respected Roland. I thought he was an iconic character, but Wizard and Glass was the one that made me love Roland. So it's just every book brings something different to this series.
Wizard and Glass is so polarizing amongst the fans. It really
seems
is.
to be. It really does.
People love it, or that's where they nope out in the series because they don't want a 500-page flashback in the middle of the series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that's where Steve stopped in his read along. Steve Talks Books. He stopped right there. I think Andrew had a hard time with that part too. I think with some of like the sexual stuff that was in that book.
My man's got. It's my man.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just it's really polarizing. But like I totally understand. Like, and now reading more Stephen King stuff, he really loves doing those flashbacks and like. But I feel like they're super necessary in like getting this background of these characters and getting you to really understand them. But I can see why people would back out of that because they're really drawn out like a lot.
They are. Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's almost like I know I heard about some initial plans for some older plans for adaptations that they had initially, and they were going to start with the backstory of Roland from Wizard and Glass, and that kind of makes sense, and as a reader, you kind of almost wish that they had started with that. I see why they didn't, though, or I see why Stephen King didn't. But it can be kind of off-putting. I can definitely appreciate that for sure, because it's like, oh boy, when is this going to end? I don't need a Harlequin romance in the middle of my no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, guys. Well, imagine reading this series in real time like I was and waiting to see what happens after the end of Wastelands. And then you get a book this thick. And it's going to be awesome. And then you get a flashback the whole time. And they don't move.
Man.
So, yeah, it was rough. But I mean, I wanted those answers. But again, I can see why people are either in or out at that point in the series. I feel like that really is the swing point for them.
Yeah, for me, I was just kind of whatever King decided to give me. I was like, okay, that's where we're going, and I just sort of went with it. And I think that was the spirit that was most guaranteed to help me enjoy the whole thing. And Cyprian asks what my least favorite book in the series was. That's a tough question, actually. Probably Wolves of the Kala. Because I do get what he was doing in that one, but it was the pacing. It was just this slow lead up, which is very much like the source material, the Magnificent Seven. Slow lead up, slow. And it was just a little bit too much lead up for me until we get to the action, which is like blink and you'll miss it. So it was just kind of.
Yeah, it definitely felt like a side quest, I think. And when you just kind of wanted to get on that final path to the tower, and it's like, really, we're going to go to another side quest in this little small town, huh? Yeah. So I was feeling that when I had to wait years between these books. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I can't imagine that. I mean, I feel lucky that I was able to just read the series. I actually took a couple of years to read the whole series. It was one of the not at the beginning of my channel, but not too long after I started the channel, I just picked up the Gunslinger, and so just finishing it now. I took my time, I guess, but I loved every single book.
I'll say first video of yours I saw was you talking about the Gunslinger. So
yeah,
it's been fun watching this journey in real time. I love it.
Yeah, finally made it to the tower. Wow.
Yes.
I have the unpopular opinion that Gunslinger is the worst of the series. I get a lot of flack for that, but
just about everybody I know says Gunslinger is their least favorite.
Yeah, I think a lot of people say that, but the people who love the Gunslinger love the Gunslinger. And I'm definitely one of them. I enjoyed the Gunslinger. I thought, this is weird, and I'm in,
And having read the end of the Dark Tower, now I appreciate the Gunslinger more.
Yep.
Same.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder how the Gunslinger would do for a reread. I bet you people out in the chat.
I did that last year, and it was like, holy crap, Yeah, so you'll see a lot of stuff, especially if you read the revised edition, where he did kind of tweak a couple things to make it even more seem like that. But yeah, I recommend that for sure.
Yeah, when it came to like the Gunslinger, like the first book, I wound up like DNFing it like 3 times. Like I started reading it like a while ago because it was my younger brother's favorite series. He was always talking about the Gunslinger, and I was like, I don't know. And then when I started reading the Gunslinger, I was like, I cannot get into this. And then finally with the read along, I was like, let me just push through and like get through it. And even then, like I was like, when I finished it, I was just, I don't know about this series. Let's just keep going and just see what's going on, because I was in that read along with Steve. And and these comments are cracking me up. But yeah, like with the Gunslinger now, the same thing with you, Chaz. Like I feel like I appreciate it a lot. Like thinking back on it, I appreciate it, and I really want to read it again and get the full scope of it, just to see, now that I know how the series ends and how it's loops kind of. I want to definitely go through that again. I don't know when though, but soon.
Yeah, so here's a good question from Bearded Bookworm about other King books that are necessary reading. Now, I've only read the Dark Tower series, so I'm going to defer to Mike on this one, but I do know certain like Salem's Lot and The Stand. If you want to get more even out of the Dark Tower.
No, is he talking about, I wonder if he's talking about important to read with the Dark Tower, or just books I consider necessary reading by King. I mean,
well, you can answer both, actually.
All necessary. They're all necessary. I always tell people you don't have to read anything to understand the series. You can on your own. Yeah. Just a couple of books, I'll say, if you've got the time to read this 1,100-page book called The Stand, it gives you a lot more context into the Man in Black. But a lot of other things is Salem's Lot, because there is a very, very important character from Salem's Lot that does show up in this series eventually. And it has more weight for you when you realize that was the moment for me where I was like, holy crap, his world's all connected, and I thought it was so amazing. So I think it's got rewards, but it's never a thing where this isn't like, oh, you've got to watch Loki to understand the next Marvel movie. It's not like that. You can go without it and be fine, but it will give it a little bit more levity, more excitement when you see some of these characters show up. You're like, holy hell, how is this connected? It's really great.
I think even now with like some of his newer stuff, I think he's just having fun, just throwing in little Dark Tower references.
Definitely.
Like even with Fairy Tale, that I just finished recently, there's like little bits here and there. Like the second he picked up his gun, I was like, oh, gunslinger. Like you just start getting those feelings of like Dark Tower and like everything. Like you just pick up all these little things, and it's like fun now that I've read the series and now I can pick up on all those little things. But I definitely agree with you. I haven't read Salem's Lot yet, but I kind of spoiled it for myself with reading the series. But it's okay.
That's the other thing. It's a great book, and Wolves of the Kala will completely spoil Salem's Lot. So I want you to read Salem's Lot because it's amazing. So I always say, if you're going to read one thing before, read Salem's Lot, just because it's an awesome book and you don't need it spoiled.
Yeah. I definitely felt like my experience was enhanced by reading Salem's Lot when I did. I read it immediately after. Well, I read Wind Through the Keyhole, and then I read Salem's Lot, and then I started Wolves of the Kala after that. And I definitely feel like my experience was enhanced because I had that buy-in to those characters from Salem's Lot already. And Salem's Lot is actually my favorite Stephen King book so far.
Wow.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
So we have a question here about the Gunslinger being written by King when he was 19. I read the revised version, and actually I think Joanna mentions that in her comment a little bit later. There are a couple different versions out there, and so I have not read the original myself.
I haven't either.
But I haven't since the 90s. So people ask me what was the difference between the two. I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, I assume that he smoothed it out in some ways and maybe even made it conform to the rest of the series maybe in some ways. I'm not an expert on that, but I've only read the revised version, and it didn't feel like a 19-year-old wrote it, that's for sure. I can definitely say that. So, well, I also wanted to ask you guys I was just joking, of course, earlier about poor Sarah. Before we get into spoilers, did you guys like the thumbnail? Who you were on the thumbnail? Was that?
I love it.
It's better than the hair I have in real life, so sure.
Well, Mike, I was doing you a favor there because I thought Eddie's like your favorite character, right?
Eddie's my dude, yeah. So sure, but I wouldn't have minded being Oi. I'm just saying, that's my spirit animal, So
that made me laugh so much.
Yeah,
Oi. I was like, I'm cool with being Susanna because she's cool.
The glasses and the beard going on, it was like, oh boy, yeah.
But now I'm like, for sure, I'm not cutting my hair.
Yeah, it almost reminded me of the Cheshire Cat when I saw it. I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
really?
So funny.
I had fun making it, that's for sure. So,
Yeah.
are you guys ready for spoilers? Should we begin
Oh yeah.
getting into it?
Let's
So,
dive in.
heads up for anybody who has not read the series. If that applies to you and you don't want to hear spoilers about the series, this is the time to bail on us. But if you've read the series or if you don't care about spoilers, because frankly, I feel like King spoils his own books left and right all the time.
Yeah.
So I think King is the least least worried you have to be about spoiling when it comes to his books. You know, he's just he's going to tell you. And that was the last time he ever saw her live. It's like, what? Why are you telling me this? Right?
And that was the last they ever spoken.
Yeah.
I've been complaining about that since the 80s, and he just continues to do it. But
he just keeps doing his thing. And, you know, that's some skill as an author, I have to say. If you can spoil your own books like that and then
still make you give a damn. Yeah.
Still make you like be on the edge of your seat. I think that's pretty amazing. What else does King, before we get into spoilers, what else does King do brilliantly, like the best? What is he the best at, in your opinion, guys?
Characters,
Yeah,
100%.
100%.
Yep.
Okay.
He can differentiate everybody in such a nonchalant way. Like, he'll say something, for example, like needful things. You've got like 60 characters in that. You never once get confused who anyone is because he gives them all like one little thing. Like, oh, this person's like jaw clicks when they chew their food or something. You remember that. It's amazing how he's able to do that.
Yeah.
He has an amazing way of presenting insights into the human psyche in a way that is engaging on the page. He has a real gift for understanding human psychology and then presenting it to you that just makes you like not only understand it but relate to it in a very deep way.
Yeah, and he writes damaged characters so great. He'll talk about a lot of like mental illness and things like that a lot of people wouldn't touch at the time. I mean, like you look at Susanna, obviously, and he's just able to always touch on those things when everyone else was like, well, that's just stuff we don't talk about. And he's like, yeah, I'll do it. Challenge accepted, you know?
Yeah, I totally respect that too. Like his characters, like you really feel for them and you go really attached to them because you know them so well. And it has to do a lot with those flashbacks. I feel like he's giving you all that background story on all these people so that way you really care. I mean, again, like I said, they can get a little drawn out and I can see why people wouldn't like that. But I personally really enjoy that. Like the plot can go nowhere. And I just want to be in this person's brain the whole time. And I feel like King is really, really great at doing that and like making you care because of all the background, like even just knowing Eddie's drug history and how he's able to kind of overcome that. The love that him and Susanna developed, like the way that they feel for each other, like the father-son type relationship that you know Roland had with Jake. Like you just even the love that Jake had with Oi, like that, even that relationship, I feel like he was able to make you feel that with those characters. And there's not many authors that can do that. Like I've been reading other books recently and I don't feel the same thing that I felt reading these relationships with King.
Yeah.
You know that I talk about that all the time with him, a slice of life. No other author can write 300 pages about just a person's day-to-day life and I'm fully engaged. Everyone else, I'm like, I need something to happen with this. I'm just like, I just want to hang out with these people. You know, like Revival had like 300 pages. Like, what's going on? Nothing. And it's great. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, King gets people. He gets our psychology. He's willing to delve into stuff that I think a lot of authors would shy away from. And he gets into like the visceral stuff, right? I mean, he can get, kind of gross sometimes. And he's absolutely fine. That's part of the horror element, I think, of all of this. But he's fine at just showing us in our absolute complete awkwardness. You know, I mean, there are certain scenes in here, since we're at spoilers now, I think people who we already warned people away. We're at spoilers. I mean, there's that one scene in when he's chasing the serial killer guy and into the subway, and Roland's got he's actually in the dude's body, right? He's in the dude's body, and he's put all kinds of bullet ammunition in his underwear, and he's running like full tilt with these bullets bouncing around in his underwear, and he's like, I don't care if it hurts the guy. You know,
He's like, I don't care about this guy.
I was laughing so hard at that scene of him running
Yeah. It's quite the
in his
picture.
tiny whities with the bullets bouncing all over the place. I mean, King puts people in these awkward situations, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And just shows us for what we are. I
And
just
Matt
feel
brings
like,
up, obviously, no one can write preteen kids like him for whatever reason.
Yeah,
He's just
wow.
always been able to capture how preteen kids talk to each other. He's always been able to get it. Everyone else is like, it's like reading a Dawson's Creek script. It's like no kids that age talk like this.
right.
You know, he's always able to really, really capture that well. So that's why his coming of age is just, for me, just perfect.
So for Carl's question, I went through the keyhole after I read the fourth book, Wizard in Glass. That's where I read it, and
I still haven't read it.
Whoa, okay.
I said I was going to do it after I did this reread, and then I got all the way right to book 6 and stopped.
Okay, well, we will
reason
not
I did it.
spoil. We will not spoil Went Through the Keyhole for you. But I have a feeling
He's like, I don't care.
I'm not worried about it.
it's King, right? But I have a feeling. Here's my prediction, Mike. You are going to actually really like Went Through the Keyhole. That is
Oh,
my.
really? Does he go back and fix all the things he screwed up in book 6 and 7?
I think it's his apology. It's his apology to. It's his apology for the stuff that you're probably not so happy about.
All right, we'll see.
But-
Yeah.
I'll do it. I'll do it.
Just don't listen to the audiobook. He narrates it himself.
I don't
Oh,
audio, so I luck out on that one. But I've
Okay.
heard. I think when people were doing Needful Things, and they were like, "Dude, I can't get through this with him reading it." So
I can't. I couldn't. I finished it, but I was just not like. I needed someone else. I just needed
Mhm.
someone else to do it. King, I'm sorry. You write really great, but don't narrate the book.
yeah, it's like when a really great athlete becomes a play-by-play guy and they're terrible at it. I'm like, just because you're a great player doesn't mean you're a great announcer. You know, same thing.
Yeah, I don't think King has the smoothest narrator voice in the
Mm-mm.
world.
Yeah.
Oh well.
I also read 4.5 right. I read it as 4.5 right after Wizard and Glass as well, and and King suggests it to be read that way too. So I think that's probably the best. It's interesting what he just said about Martin, because I don't know if I'm one of the few, but like right from the beginning, I assumed that Martin and the Man in Black were the same person.
Mhm.
Like that's kind of how I read it. I was always under that assumption, so I didn't take that as a change in Went Through the Keyhole, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
right there with you with Bald Book Tuber. I read it after Went Through the Keyhole after I read the whole series, and I was not. Yeah, I felt the same way. I kind of felt like I wished I would have read it after Wizard and Glass, and maybe it would have been a little bit better for me. But yeah, after reading the whole, like having this super high, like I like loving Dark Tower so much, and then reading Went Through the Keyhole, I was like, like you know, that's kind of like how I felt about it.
Yeah, I've had people tell me you should read it after, because it's a nice way to revisit the characters after what happens in book 7. But I just went ahead and read it as 4.5, and I loved it that way. I absolutely loved it that way. I don't think you can go wrong, honestly. And let's get True Random Gamer's question or observation here. Or this is, I think it's a big part of it, bigger and bigger as the series continues. You get the first indication the King is going here, I think, really firmly in Wolves of the Kala. But it really, I mean, it's dominates book 6, and obviously it's an important part of book 7. Is what we might call the meta element of this series, where King is obviously deeply concerned about what is it that a writer does? What is this act of creation that a writer participates in, and how does the writer relate to his characters? And what is this relationship? Now, my take on it is just to be brief about it. King is not a character in the series, not the actual author. There is a character named Stephen King in the series, but it's not Stephen King, the author. I'm sure that he would agree with me that this is not himself. It is a character based on himself, an author who becomes part of the series. But
it sounds like you're really tap dancing around it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But I want to hear everybody's take on this. Did the meta elements work for you or not? And I think this is part of where we probably will part ways a little bit. but I want to get you guys first. So let's who wants to jump in and talk about the meta element?
I'll be short. No. There.
Okay. So can I push a little on that and ask why? Did it push you out of the story and you're like, what is this?
I don't know. I really liked just the escapism of a fantasy world, and I don't know. It just didn't work for me. I know that True Random Gamers just banged heads with me about this for like a year now. It's just something that didn't work for me. I think other people have things that don't work for them in other series. It doesn't mean you need to explain it to anybody. It just means it's just not a storytelling device that clicked with me. It's just something that completely pulled me out of the series, and it was hard for me to ever really get excited about it again.
Yeah. Okay.
But it didn't ruin the series for me like people act like. Again, Mike hated the ending of Dark Tower. I did not hate the ending of Dark Tower. I didn't like decisions that he made in book 6 and 7. I didn't like how he handled the farewell to the Man in Black. I hated that. I mean, this is like his best villain in his whole universe, and I hated how the send-off he got was very unsatisfying. And yeah, I didn't like him writing a version of himself into the book. So
yeah.
It broke it for me. So that's
fair enough. And I think you're far from alone in that reaction. Let's see how Ercy and Chaz felt about it. Ercy, what did you think about that meta stuff? Did it boot you out of the story? Did you like it? What did it do for you?
For a second, it did. But then I kind of felt like, well, at first, my first impression of that when he first was throwing himself in there, it did take me out, and I was just like, really, dude? Like, you're really putting yourself in the story. Like, what are you doing? Like just for a second. But then I kind of saw what he was doing, and a lot of authors do this. Like, they infuse, they base a lot of stuff based on their own experiences, right? And him throwing himself in there, being the drunk, being, having the bad things about himself, I can see how personal he kind of took those things and wanting to kind of explore something else with that. So even though it's kind of like the author infusing himself in there, I kind of appreciated that, because it's not so much like he was doing like a reflection of his life, like, look how much better I am. It's just more of like, look how horrible I was, and just kind of exploring that idea. And even with the whole series in general, he was throwing in all these different references left and right. Like when he was throwing in Star Wars stuff and Wizard of Oz stuff. Like, even when you throw in those kind of things always throw me off for a little bit, because I think about that. I pull away from that story and I think about the other story and then try to think of how it relates here. But when he did it with himself, that was a little bit more on that with that idea. But I don't know. I like what he did with it, because Roland kind of like put him in his place and was just like, look, this is, you need to do something. And Roland really like got him to kind of reflect on himself and try to do something. And I think Roland chastising him and patronizing him kind of I really like that about it.
Okay, cool. And Chaz, what about you?
Just as a side note, what I was laughing at earlier was Madison's comment about the ending being a big F you to the readers.
Oh, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, I thought that was so funny, but and it kind of was. So I already knew by the time I got to that point that this was just a weird series. So I had determined by this point, I'm just going to go with the weird, and it was definitely weird. It's a very ballsy move on Stephen King's part to write it. I don't think many authors would dare to do it, and I have a great respect for him for daring to put himself, a version of himself in the book. But it also is a very, I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to like quantum theory and multiple universes and stuff like that. So I'm like, oh, okay. I already knew that this was kind of like a dystopian, or they were in different parts of a dystopian kind of Earth. So it made sense to me that Stephen King would exist in his own universe. So
yeah,
I think there were parts of it where I kind of got taken out, but for the most part, I liked it. I didn't have a problem with it, especially knowing that this was Stephen King's most personal. Uh, he had a very personal passion for this series, and I think it kind of made sense. But I can definitely see where people dissent on it, why it really bothers people. Yeah.
Well, even with like the genre bending style of the whole series, I mean,
Oh yeah.
would you expect less?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He had romance, he had sci-fi, he had portal fantasy, he had Western. There was so much in here.
Excellent point, Ercy. And I don't feel like the meta element where you bring in Stephen King is any weirder than bringing in the Wizard of Oz or Tolkien or Shardik or Star Wars or Harry Potter. Or, right? I mean, it's all just bring on the weird. But another, I think, fairly controversial thing we should tackle right away. Let's just do it, guys. And this is where maybe also, Mike, I'm not sure. I haven't talked to you about it yet, but I'm curious.
I'll be honest, guys. I haven't read books 6 and 7 since the week that they were released, so I remember the big things. But if you want to get into like, oh, what this character said, this character might not be fresh on it. So
we're going to the big things. You're not going to forget this.
All right.
So how? And guys, major spoilers. It's huge spoilers, everybody. Okay. How did you guys feel about? I was surprised initially, like, oh wow, okay, there goes Father Callahan. Boom, early in the book. There goes the baddie. I thought was going to be whatever you want to call him, Walter or Martin or Randall Flagg.
I stick with Randall Flagg. Yeah.
Holy cow! Did he get eaten up?
Quite literally.
Quite literally. And then I thought, okay, when King killed off Eddie, I thought, oh, this is very, very hard. But okay, I get it. He needed to sacrifice somebody. Okay, fine. This is tough. I mean, I'm going to have a hard time getting over it, just like the characters. And then he did Jake.
And save Stephen King.
I was like, go, dude, what are you doing? What are you doing here? You can't do Jake.
That was so hard.
I mean, it just was, whoa. So, I mean, were you, Mike, we'll start with you. Was that part of why you think you didn't love the last?
No, man, I knew you're going to have losses on a journey like this. I mean, that's why I love something like A Song of Ice and Fire. It's realistic. Anyone can go at any time. You don't have to finish your quest for life. Boom, it can go out like that. No, definitely nothing that bothered me. I mean, I hated it. I mean, at least Eddie, I thought, went out, in a blaze of glory, whereas Jake went out for the dumbest reason. But hey, again, that happens in real life. No one dies heroically sometimes, most of the time. So that's definitely not anything that bothered me. I did hate the way that that Randall Flagg goes out there, because you had established him and the Crimson King as like your big bad, and then they just bring in Mordred out of nowhere. This is like, I didn't feel like he needed that. And I think I was talking with Madison the other day, and she was saying like, I think Randall Flagg's a great villain, but then I just kind of say, LOL, you got killed by a baby, dude. So. Yeah. So that's my favorite multiverse villain, and it's like, that's, if he just had a better way he went out, I would have been.
I mean,
I've been begging for him to bring him back for years. I've been hoping he would bring him back and give him a better.
It was a spider baby, at least, right?
I can understand that. Yeah.
You think there's a Shelob kind of nod there in that, demise?
It was kind of an it nod too. Yeah.
How so? Because I haven't read it.
Well,
never mind.
The intergalactic
I can't
spider.
say.
So, yeah.
I can't say.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm right there with you, Mike. I felt like that was kind of like a little too fast for him. Like, he deserved a little better than that. At least some kind of showdown with Roland or something, being as how much he tormented Roland so much. Having some kind of showdown would have been really cool. But with everything else, I was really like, they really pulled on my heartstrings. Like, not so much the deaths themselves, but the reactions to it.
Exactly.
I think that's where I was sobbing. Like, I'm reading this at work and I have to go to my car and like clean my face.
Dude, no, I bawled when Eddie died. And he's basically being stolen for like being his father. And I was a mess.
Oh
then,
yeah,
like
the
how
father parts.
Susanna, yeah. And when
Yeah.
Susanna was like taking care of him, all that like killed me. And
Oh yeah.
even with like Jake, with how he kind of accepted like the turnaround that he kind of felt, like how he was able to like let him go so quickly because he knows he's going to go to the Dark Tower from the gunslinger, and how much he kind of regrets that decision and wants to make up for it, and he's still kind of in the same spot and kind of accepted him as son. That just like killed me so much. Oh my god, that I was bawling. I was like, his reactions to like when he's like holding him and burying him and everything, that just like killed me, because it was just like over and over again, like another emotion that he's expressing, that he's finally accepting that he can have these emotions for other people and not be so hell-bent on this tower, that he can actually have these human connections, and then to just lose them. Oh my god, it was so sad. Even with Oi, like Oi went out like,
that was
That was
the
uncalled
worst.
for.
oh my god, like
I mean,
he went
all
out
the
like a
character deaths
badass,
broke
like,
me.
yeah, like
But yeah,
Oi, like you,
Oi was painful.
yeah, like you know he was gonna die the second he wasn't eating, when he didn't go with Suzanne. You know he's not gonna make it, right?
Yeah.
But then when Roland like yelled at him or something, and then later he's like holding him and like talking, oh my god, I was crying so much. I was crying so much.
Oh
'Cause
yeah, I
it was
had
just
the
like,
tissue box closed for sure, because I
I'm
was
with what
bawling.
Michael says here. I
Yeah, me
expected
too.
everyone to die reading this. I expected everyone to die except Roland, because that's, I mean, the first book, he lets Jake die because of this obsession, you know, because I thought that was just going to be the full cyclical nature of the story, was it was going to be just Roland in the tower, you know. So I expected everyone to die, but it didn't make it easier, you know.
No.
Yeah.
No, it definitely didn't.
Yeah,
Character deaths are never a reason I have problems with a story. I mean, people die.
Yeah.
It happens.
Chaz,
Same.
if you want to,
Yeah.
what'd you think of that, Chaz? Of all the characters dying and everything?
Oh, it was brutal for me. Like especially. Okay.
Don't cry.
Especially when Eddie died, like I was so invested in him and Susanna's relationship.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, no, no, please. I mean, I knew it was a possibility. I mean, like Mike said, you know, going into this, people are gonna die. But I was like, you know, I was hoping that at least the ka-tet would mostly survive. It was a remote hope, but I was hoping. And yeah.
Clayton, you are a hero, my friend.
Yeah.
These comments are crazy.
I'm not laughing on your feelings there, Chaz. I'm sorry, that comment.
Oh no, I knew what you were talking about. I knew it was the comment. It's all good.
I mean, what someone said earlier, though, I mean, it fits, though, in a way. I mean, the eraser thing was a bit, you know, okay.
Bunny. It was.
I expected more of a confrontation, too. I will
Yeah.
totally admit that. But it's really about this, what Michael's talking about here. We're on the journey of Roland's single-minded obsession. That's what it's about from beginning to end. And that's the central concern here, not that we're building up some huge, big baddie here. I feel like, and just from the Dark Tower, I don't know King's other books, but he seems to enjoy just kind of randomly having people die in the stupidest, weirdest ways, right?
That's how it happens, though. Yeah. So
because that's kind of how it happens in life. So I really feel like the Crimson King's death, it's as much as I was disappointed, I wasn't shocked. I mean, I thought, okay, that's kind of what he does.
Right. Yeah. I don't think the Crimson King was ever meant to technically be the big bad. I think the Dark Tower is the big bad.
Or Roland is.
Or Roland is. Yeah. It's very much a yin yang. It's almost like Roland and the Crimson King are the yin and yang. So it's never, it's all about the Dark Tower. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Eddie is indeed the best.
Yeah. Eddie's one of my favorite characters for sure.
So what do you guys make of this? While we're on the topic of Roland getting to the tower, he does make it.
Yeah.
And how were you with the epilogue, or the thing that King tells you, don't read this? And of course, that means you're going to read it, right?
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. You want a happy ending? Stop here. If you want the real ending, keep going.
Exactly. So what did you make of the it seems like, of course, he goes to the tippy top of the tower finally, and he opens the door, and then we're back in the gunslinger, back in the desert. One little difference, and you guys can talk about the significance of this, is he has the horn.
He has the horn of Eld. Yeah.
He has the horn of Eld this time, which he didn't have last time. So that suggests some evolution on Roland's part as he's going through this cycle again. It's very Hindu kind of ending, really, isn't it?
It is.
Very Buddhist Hindu kind of ending where he's going through the cycle again.
And I like that. That's why when people say, "Oh, you hate the ending," I didn't hate the ending. I thought
you like that part. Okay,
I thought that was awesome.
I love that part.
He's got the final piece to do it right this time, and it's up to you to decide: did he do it right this time or not? You know.
Yeah.
Some people consider that ambiguous. I thought it was genius. Actually, I like that part a lot. Didn't like the eraser bit, but hey. I mean, that's kind of, honestly, it's kind of my fault. The whole time I'm expecting like this big Sauron type person, and the comparison I made was like, imagine you were reading Lord of the Rings all those years, and when Sam and Frodo finally get to Mordor, Sauron's locked out of his bedroom and shouting from a perch, telling you to get off of his lawn. That was the comparison I made to the Crimson King. So that was my own fault. I built him up as something awesome. So
yeah, it just seems like a king thing to do.
Sometimes you can get locked out of your house. It happens.
True. Yeah.
You got to break a window.
It's like the perfect visual, like some old man like throwing stuff. That was great. No, well, yeah, like that was kind of like that to me was kind of funny, like the way that he died, but also like really creative. Like I wouldn't have thought like that would have been the ending, and I think that kind of threw me for a loop. But I just thought it was kind of funny. But with the way that he cycled through, that was another moment. Me personally, I have this thing with like something that always gets me is people's reactions to grief, which is why I was sobbing like a baby. And also when people forget things and they're in this moment of actively losing their memory, right? And when Roland was experiencing that, I thought that was like really hard to read, because I just feel like you're in this moment of like dementia or like amnesia, and you're grasping for these memories, like his relation, you know what I mean? Like his relationships. And then to just be like cycled back to where he was and having to do all of that over again, like that personal growth, like he's gonna lose Jake again. He's gonna, all these things that he developed over time, and to be losing that and then to be cycled back into that obsession again. Oh, that was so tragic. I was like, but I love that though. Like it hurts, but like in a good way, like as a reader. But yeah, that actively losing his memory bit, that was so hard.
Yeah. I mean, it just seems so fitting though, because this is what the series is about from the very beginning. When I met Roland in the Gunslinger, I thought, okay, this is an Ahab type character. That's a Moby Dick reference for you, Mike.
I'm aware.
There you go. This is an Ahab character right here.
Yeah, using that analogy is better than the whole book. Yeah, of Moby Dick.
So, I mean, it's just like he is obsessed. That's what this series is about, is obsession. King's relationship to writing, I think, is somehow related to this as well, which is why he brings so much of his own, like, what is this thing and why do I do this? Where does it come from? And he feels like he is somehow just spewing what like Ka is making him spew out, or he's resisting it at times. And it's pretty cool though. I think that ending is a fair consensus that everybody seems to like it. Any other thoughts on it before we go to it? So somebody's comment, I think it was Adam up above, reminded me it's the coda that we're talking about. The epilogue is where we see Susanna, I guess, meeting a different version of Eddie and Jay.
Yeah,
right?
Like a reunion. There's a really beautiful art out there of them all like having the reunion on the streets of New York, and it's
with the hot chocolate.
Really, it's really awesome. It's a really good drawing.
Now that part for me didn't work as well as the coda. I actually didn't like the epilogue as much.
You don't like the Disney ending, the happy ending? Yeah.
I thought, okay, maybe King is trying to make up for, killing off these beloved characters or something. It just didn't seem quite compelling to me. It just seemed like a little too pat. And I had all kinds of questions, which is dumb because I didn't have questions about other things. But for this particular moment, I was like, wait, so that's not really Eddie. That's not really Jake. It's a different version of them. I guess he had dreams about Susanna, so he knew she was coming. But am I wrong? Ercy, what did you think of that? Did you like giving us some consolation to Susanna's character in the end?
Yes and no, because I'm okay with like what Mike was saying with like, people die and you have to kind of get over that and you have to like live with it, right? And this is sort of giving her like a second chance, but I think she knew that this was a different version of them, and she kind of accepted that wasn't really the Eddie that she had, but she was willing to make new memories and move on from the Dark Tower. And I like that. But I'm okay with accepting that somebody's gone in a story. So that's why I was kind of back and forth with that. I don't know, like, I don't know. What do you guys think? I don't know. I was kind of ambiguous with it. I'm okay either way.
Like,
but
I like the regular ending, but I was like, I'm not gonna lie, getting a little, sending the reader home happy. I think I didn't have a problem with it as much, but why not?
They give her something with everything that she went through. Like, Roland's stuck in his obsession, right? But Susanna was kind of pulled into it. She didn't really have a choice. I mean, Ka had other reasons for her being
I kind of agree with
right?
someone else said
But
maybe they should have flipped the code in the epilogue. Maybe that would have, had a better impact. Maybe.
I like it the way it is. I like the coda being the last thing because, again, this is about Roland. I feel like, think of everybody he sacrificed to get to this Dark Tower. Think of it. His original ka-tet, right? With Cuthbert and
Charlie Tree.
I mean,
she was the worst.
Too soon?
What about Susan? I mean, think about Susan.
Right.
I mean, my God, look at what this guy has sacrificed to get there. And of course, he knows all along that, yes, Jake and Eddie and Susanna and Oi think of him as he's like their father. And he's also proven in the Gunslinger. Now, he's a different man. He's learned how to love. Definitely. But in the Gunslinger, he just says, he's presented with a choice. You can save this boy, Jake, or you can go on to the Dark Tower. And he's like, bye, Jake. It was like, whoa.
Wait, peace out. He's like, I don't know you.
He does regret it later.
New phone. Who's this?
Regret that later. And he comes to love his ka-tet. Like, in a way, I feel like that's why he gets the Horn of Eld in his next, cycle, is because he actually loved his ka-tet. But he still was... He knew it on some level. He was going to sacrifice them to get to that Dark Tower, So I really feel like that coda had to be the last statement because this is really about Roland and his obsession and everything else. But I'm glad that people feel good about the epilogue, giving a little bit of happiness and all that bleakness, all that loss. It's probably a good thing to have a little bit of balancing out.
Well, I'll finish my reread next year, and I'll let you know how I feel this time because it'll be the first time since 2004 that I've read that ending. So.
Oh yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah.
But I bet you didn't forget those big events.
Oh, no, and that was the thing is like everyone was really enjoying it on the read along. I was like, I don't want to be a wet blanket, so I was like, I'll just read 6 and 7 later because if you're enjoying it, I definitely don't want to take that away from you. Definitely, you don't have to have the same things that I didn't like about it. It's fine by me. It's always been fine by me. The King fans, they were mostly on my side when it was first released. It was, I'd say 8 out of 10. It was very, very negative. Over time, a lot of them have come around and said they like it. And I have found that people now reading it, modern readers reading it straight through with no waiting, they seem to mostly like it. So I'll accept that I might have an unpopular opinion on that one.
Okay.
But again, I like the ending.
You're like, let me make it clear.
I like the ending. He hated the ending of Dark Tower. I didn't hate the ending of Dark Tower. And I'll say that, with Mike Flanagan really does get to make this, which is my pipe dream, by the way. He really gets to make this. I always say any adaptation, don't change the story. Don't change things that Stephen King. You're not a better writer than Stephen King. Quit changing his story. On that one, well, you can change a couple things. God, I hope it happens.
So another thing that happens in Dark Tower 7 is the showdown after where Eddie dies, but they do succeed in saving the beam, from at least which beam is it? It's the one of the turtle, and is that the one they say it's being chewed apart by the telepaths, whatever they're called.
Right. Yeah.
So that was a kind of a climax in a way too, wasn't it? Because do you think that was the true quest? That if Roland, for example, had stopped there and he said, okay, we achieved the quest. We actually saved the day. The beam is going to be okay. It's going to heal. And I need to put this Dark Tower obsession behind me now.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been his last time going through the cycle, right? Is that where he needs to arrive at, is to save the day and then leave the tower, not go to the tower? Because Susanna makes that tough choice. She's like, yeah, I feel the call, but you know what? I'm not going there. And I think she has a happier ending than Roland does, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Is that the true quest, to save the beam then? And Roland just needs to see that.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I think in order for Roland to actually be able to go to the Dark Tower, the beam definitely needs to be saved, or else the Dark Tower would have collapsed and been gone or whatever. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Philip, because really the only person that truly cares about the Dark Tower is Roland. And the only person that that the Dark Tower is actually ready to face off against, or wanting to face off against, is Roland. They're, again, it goes back to that mano y mano. It's Roland versus the Dark Tower ultimately.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say the others are just side pieces. They're not. They're integral characters to the story, but ultimately the Dark Tower is Roland's and Roland's alone, I think. So
yeah, I mean, he even uses that Patrick at the end, right? I mean, he's putting this kid in mortal danger.
Why reading Insomnia before this, that character will make a lot more sense, because I felt like he came out of nowhere the first time I read Dark Tower. And now when I went back and read Insomnia, which I read Insomnia before I read Dark Tower last time, this time reading Insomnia, I'm like, that's so much clearer now. So there are things like that do tie in to Dark Tower, that it is rewarding if you read those things. You just don't have to. But yeah, that character specifically makes a lot more sense.
Definitely on my list.
Yep. Yeah. So there's that moment that True Random Gamer is right, when he goes to the Tech Corporation and they tell him, this is it. You've done it. You saved the beam. And he's like, nope, I got to go to that tower,
Mm-hmm.
And you feel like he might be in the wrong there. That when he finally makes that decision to save the beam and then leave it at that, then he's going to leave this wheel finally, perhaps.
You mean Roland makes bad decisions?
Bye, Jake. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And that would be a cool one too. I agree. Yeah. If he were to do that as well, if he were to make it there and say, you know what, you guys are my tower now. You're my family.
Oh.
Yeah, and I think that's why he ends the series the way he is. Basically, it's there could be 1,000 different endings to this. Which one do you want? I think, I don't know, and I know that pisses a lot of people off, because either King writes his endings too happy, too sad, or too ambiguous. I'm like, well, he really can't pick another path than one of those three. So I don't know.
Yep, that's exactly right, Matt. I mean, that's exactly right. That's what I'm thinking. That when on the cycle where he finally says, you're my family, you're my ka-tet, you're more important than the tower. Isn't that true of life? I mean, that's a pretty profound statement about life too, isn't it? Don't you think?
Yeah, and it's true. It's true from the perspective of karma and reincarnation. That whole people who are very strong on that philosophy, that you're not going to stop that cycle until you realize what's the most important thing to you. Yeah.
So in some other world, perhaps there's a Roland who's made that choice to put his family over the tower, and in that world, that's a very happy ending.
Yeah.
I mean, well, even if you think about King himself, I mean, even with when he inserted himself into the story, like, he had that obsession with alcohol and all that stuff. And then once he's able to give that up, then he can really be with his family and be the man that he wants to be. Right. So it's kind of like a little similar to that when you're thinking about the tower, and it's like this dark obsession, and it's like, can you really truly give that up? And how you have to actively work every single day to give that up for your family, and then to, I have everything good with my family, and you still take that turn. I mean, it's hard. And I think it's kind of a little realistic. to write it that way. That's just my opinion. I always think about like the darker way of things in life or whatever. But yeah, it's just like this constant like pull towards it, and it's sort of his destiny, his call, right? But it's just so tragic that it has to be that way for him, and you don't want it to be that way. I'm glad that Susanna sort of had that choice, but Roland's not really given that choice.
Yeah, I think she shows more wisdom in that moment when she also feels the pull and she knows if I go any closer to that tower, I'm not coming back.
Mhm.
So that's where she makes the decision, has Patrick draw the door, and she goes into this other world where she finds, alter Jake and alter Eddie and presumably leads a happy life,
But even with Oi too, because even like after he lost Jake, that was like his true companion. Like Oi was part of the ka-tet, obviously, but when he lost Jake, he's like, I'm done. This is I have
He had
nothing
nothing
else.
else to live for.
Yeah, like he's like, I'm going. Like this may be it. Like I just like read his mind. You know what I mean? Like you feel that for Oi, and seeing that he was just like, I'm going. I'm not leaving because I have nothing else. I have nothing. Like he loves Susanna, but it's not the same thing that he had with Jake.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very true, Matt.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's the end of all attachments, and that's how you leave the cycle of rebirth and all of that. Yeah. Roland's got a big time attachment to that tower.
He does. Yeah,
it's so crazy that King is able to pull all these ideas into this. I can't like
all of the ideas. Yeah,
for real.
I think it's kind of ironic too because I think he alluded to this a little bit earlier too, Philip. His whole obsession is based around the assumption in his mind that the Dark Tower is the cause of all his woes and the cause of all the people close to him dying, when in reality, it's Roland himself.
Yep, that's right.
I think it's his own true enemy, and he doesn't realize if he would just cling on to people instead of clinging on to the Dark Tower,
yep,
he would stop that cycle.
So even Oi shows more wisdom than Roland because Oi doesn't go to the tower. He doesn't continue with Roland to go to the tower. He continues to protect Roland.
Yes.
That's his motive, and he does it. And Oi knows he's not going to make it, and we know he's not going to make it. But
so sad.
That's probably the hardest. I think I maybe cried the most with Oi, but that's the danger of having an animal companion that you love is that you're constantly scared that the author is going to axe the animal companion.
Now remind me, did Oi go before or after Eddie? It was after.
After.
Right?
Well,
I think maybe I was just like emotionally spent after Eddie.
So it was, if you count Father Callahan, it's Callahan, and then it was Eddie.
Yeah,
and
so
then
maybe Callahan, like he had like probably one of the greatest redemption arcs in the multiverse. So it was earned. It was awesome. It was fitting in. So yeah, but with Eddie, I was just heartbroken. So
yeah, with Father Callahan, you're right. I'm right there with you with that. Like his ending was, even though it was right in the beginning, I felt like, his sacrifice and his willingness to like hold off the vampires for Jake and Oi, like that was badass. I love that.
That was
it's sad you don't want him to go, but I mean, I thought it was like a cool way. I mean, you're getting devoured by vampires, like for a religious man to be taken out by the supernatural, right? Like that's I don't know. I love that idea, but it's still sad. But
totally.
He had to go.
But
he completed his call. He fulfilled it. That was his ultimate purpose.
That's right. And I haven't read Salem's Lot, but I feel like I almost did because there was such a big summary of Salem's Lot.
You did, yeah.
I mean, I think I've read it more or less.
The Wikipedia page. Yeah,
I'm right there with you. I did already.
So I mean, and it was Wolves of the Kala, where basically we get Salem's Lot, light, I guess. But anyway, it was clear that this guy's running around with a lot of guilt because he felt a sense of failure. He had this crisis of faith. And there's a lot about faith in this series too, I think. It's really tremendous how many themes that King weaves in here. But Callahan clearly feels like that moment of protecting Jake so that he could go and get Susanna was his redemption. And he knows he's done it because his cross works this time, right? Unlike what happened in Salem's Lot, which is explained in Wolves of the Kala. He failed. Like, he had a cross and it didn't do anything because he didn't have faith. And this time he was burning with faith, and he knew it. So he went out the way we'd all like to go out, I think, on a high. Well, we talked a little bit about the villains earlier too, and I ended up being okay, I guess. Because also I haven't read anything else by King, so I just kind of got used to him throwing in villains like the TikTok man and whoever. And yes, they're gross, and yes, they can be really. That stuff with the breakers and the guy with the pus. Okay, that was just a little where it's like, here, you want to have some. That was whoa.
Yeah, that was
so nasty.
Yes, King has many a moment where you'll say, "What the hell am I reading right now?"
Yeah, no one will ever be able to pop a zit without.
There were
that moment.
Or even Susanna with the thing breaking on her lip. Like,
oh yeah,
that was so nasty. Like, even like as a woman, I'm just like, oh, your face.
Yeah, it's like, okay, do you have to describe it, Stephen? Really? Thanks.
But I feel like her thing was even like a metaphor as well, wasn't it? In a way.
Kind of. Mm-hmm.
She was afraid of dying, of course. She thought, okay, I've got cancer of some kind here, and having Patrick erase it essentially was like a breakthrough moment. I think. As well, for if you buy the whole eraser thing, at the end, some people seem to not love the eraser part, but it does save Susanna for a happier fate, at least. But I think it's also, important that she loses the thing when she makes the decision to leave the tower and go lead a life with family, right?
It kind of that's true, Philip. It kind of makes you wonder if she had chosen a different path, she might still have died from the cancer if she'd followed Roland on to the Dark Tower. And good point.
That's an interesting thought.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now I'm just thinking about it.
Here's a question about Dandello and the Deus Ex Machina. King pretty much says, yeah, this is a Deus Ex Machina. He calls it that. He just says, yeah, okay, I wrote this, little note to you. There's my little Deus Ex Machina, so you could keep going. And that's, of course, Susanna sees the note, and it breaks her out of that moment. And she's able to help out Roland there. And we knew that she was going to be essential for Roland to get to the tower too, didn't we? Because that was Roland's really powerful moment too, by the way, when Roland kneels before Susanna and asks for her forgiveness. And she's like, what are you doing? It would be like your father kneeling in front of you and asking your forgiveness, right?
Get up, you honky muffa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love her.
Yeah, she's great.
See, with Susanna, I'll get back to that part, but with Susanna, like when she first turned, with the Detta and the Susanna, like that Detta, when she first came in, I was like, why would he put her in? I was like, this is the villain. When he first put her in. And then, when she transformed into Susanna, I was just like, okay, she's cool. Like, I like her. But the way that she's able to bring back Detta when she's necessary, I thought that was like a nice little redemption for Detta. Like these kind of people are always going to be sort of necessary in your life. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you just need that one hood, like, gangster, like, like they're necessary when they're necessary.
You need someone that'll fuck a demon to watch your back. Okay.
Right.
You need that. They will take that bullet for you.
That's an interesting thought here by True Random Gamer, comparing it to Eru Iluvatar in Lord of the Rings, where certain moments like the Eagles come and swoop up, Sam and Frodo. Sorry, spoilers for Lord of the Rings, guys.
Well, isn't this kind of like doesn't Eru like basically change the shape of the world during the fall of Numenor, so no one can go to the Grey Havens anymore? So that's a good comparison.
That's a pretty major
first age spoiler, guys. Or is that second age? It might be second age.
But I think it's an apt comparison in a way, because King, as he's kind of meditating on the place of an author as a creator, right? There is almost not quite. I mean, we're thinking of it in terms of writing, of course, but there's a sort of godlike act of creating here, right? And for King to step into the middle of the story and influence it that way is a little bit like Tolkien's having these moments of eucatastrophe in Lord of the Rings, where some divine thing happens to save the day, right? To snatch victory away from the jaws of defeat, right? So that's a thing in Tolkien, and then certainly, I think it's comparable. But yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry, Kevin. We're done with Lord of the Rings spoilers. Yeah, if you haven't read Lord of the Rings yet,
don't worry. They won't do it on Rings of Power anyway. You're fine.
Yeah. Yeah. They won't do much on Rings of Power.
Yeah. So yeah, back to those villains though. Did you guys find the villains to be a bit okay? I just got used to it. I figured it's not about the villains; it's about Roland.
We talk about like how he had like the Tick-Tock Man, kind of these one-offs. I almost feel like, and I don't think this is the case because King has so much stroke. I mean, that's how he got the stuff that he had in it out there with the editor letting it go by. When most editors have been like, yeah, Steve, you can't do this. You really can't. I think it almost feels like the publisher was telling them, can you make these somewhat self-contained so someone can just pick up a random book? Because like you read Wastelands, it can almost read like a standalone if you haven't read anything else. Someone's kind of like an adventure story. So I felt like that's maybe what they were trying to do. Or maybe it was just his plan to be like, I would like people to be able to pick this up and be like, oh, okay, I really like this. Let me go back and read the first 2 books now or something. So I don't know. That's just kind of what it feels like to me, where you did have almost like a big bad for each book. And then it just kind of all coalesced at the end.
Yeah. Although that Crimson King was really, I have to admit, I love this book, but it was not like the best confrontation ever in fantasy, right? I mean, it was kind of goofy.
Yeah, it feels very much a subversion. Like I said, it's partly my fault. I built up this big confrontation between Roland and the Crimson King. It was going to be amazing, and you didn't get it. So.
And he's lobbing snitches at him. I mean,
yeah. So, again, anyone can get locked out of their house, okay?
My husband, right, he was reading the books alongside me, and so we were having that whole conversation and this whole visual of like this whole scenario of like the old guy locked out. Like we were having so much fun with that, and like him getting erased is like,
I like imagine him like in his bathrobe, like, God damn, where did you?
But I will say, Mordred was freaking crazy, but Rhea as a villain,
she's great. Rhea the Coos, yeah.
Oh my God, she was horrible, but like in the worst way. Like I really I loved her, but I hated her. Like you can really grow to hate someone. Like if you could do that, it would be for Rhea, like developing this hate for what she was doing, not only just like the way that she was treating Susan, right, and what she was doing to her. That right there is, top one of the worst things you can do to someone, right? Because it's trauma, it's sexual assaulting someone, right? It's all these things that she was doing. And then even just her manipulating and conniving and then tricking Roland into killing his mom. Yeah. Like what?
Yeah. Like it can't get worse. Yeah.
Like that's horrible. Like the lasting impacts of those kind of things and like manipulating in a way to get his love burned alive at the stake, like top villain for sure. She was ridiculous.
That's interesting because of all the deaths that Roland is sort of responsible for, the one that he's kind of least responsible for, because he was tricked, as you said, is his mother. And yet I feel like that's the one that maybe haunts him the most. That and maybe Susan, right? I mean, it's just, and there's a lot about, mothers in here and stuff too. But that's the one. I mean, and then the whole relationship with the mother. What did you guys think of Roland's mother and her role in all of this and being, I guess, part of the bad team in a way, because she is seduced by Martin / Walter / I had the hardest time figuring out, wait, is this the same dude or not?
I just combine them all.
Maybe that was unreliable narrator, because when your parents remarry, do you ever like the person that they get with? I mean, come on, let's be for real.
True,
Yeah.
true
True,
chance.
yeah.
I mean,
It is like a
series-
Verity kind of way, or a Regal, sorry, a Lord Regal kind of way. You know, is it
Yeah.
really that bad, or is this first person's perspective? You know.
It kind of makes you wonder, though. I mean, he's doing a kind of an Arthurian thing there, obviously, too.
Yeah.
There's an Arthurian motif there where Arthur marries Guinevere,
Sure.
and Guinevere's not really into Arthur all that much. It was kind of an arranged marriage, that sort of thing. And then there's this more dashing, figure. Although in the case of Martin, I feel like he's doing more sorcery or something there to seduce her. But yeah, but yeah, there's another thing that's in this is Arthurian elements, right?
Oh, sure. Sure. I mean,
I
they're
mean, with the
basically
mom-
Knights of the Round Table, but with guns instead of swords. They really
Yep.
are the
Yeah.
gunslingers.
But like with the mom, I really felt bad because she was seduced into that role, and then even with like his father kind of knowing, I kind of like he kind of like accepted and knew that was what was happening, and he, I kind of felt really bad for that in that situation, because it's like she also fell into that trap, but at the end of the day, like she still loved her son, like she still loved Roland, and she still loved her husband, but she fell into that trap, and it was just kind of like more salt on the wound for Roland. Like could it get any worse for him? Like his mom, yeah, that was just so sad.
Yeah, especially because he identifies so much with his father. It's all about the face of your father and all of that. And, for his father to be betrayed is a betrayal of him in a way too, right?
Yeah.
Because then even with that, like to have your wife like stolen from you, it's like taking away part of your manhood, sort of, right? Like you can't even hold your woman down or something, something like that kind of element to it.
Right.
And it's kind of like you look up to your father so much, and then he can't even like keep his own household together. That's kind of, what I saw with that.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, and of course the tragedy with Susan, and that, like I said in the beginning, The Wizard in Glass is the book that made me feel like Roland was a human, somebody that I not only like I'm in awe of, but somebody I love. Like this is the first time I felt like, and that really following Wizard in Glass, some of the stuff he does in the next book, in Wind Through the Keyhole, but also in Wolves of the Kala early on. You feel like the ka-tet has come closer together because now they know his story. Now they know his human side, right? They're not there just because they're scared or whatever. They're there because they love the guy. And that's where you really feel the love for this character in the reader, but also in the ka-tet mirroring each other, and wanting him to do what's right. And he does find some love with that group. It's so touching. That's why when they die, it's so effective later on, and they mourn each other. He's building that all the way back in these earlier books. It's really cool how many echoes you get in these books too, from the earlier books to the later. I mean, for him to go back to Robert Browning's Childe Roland to the Dark Tower Came in the last book, I thought was brilliant. I thought it was a really cool full circle kind of thing. He even puts the poem in the book at the end as well, at least in my version.
Oh yeah.
Well, my question for Mike would be, since you haven't, you've read them so long ago, how do you feel like looking back at those deaths? Like how does that, do they still like impact you the same way, or do you feel like you're kind of like accepted it or something?
I mean, I thought I was fine, and then I started rereading the series and like all of Eddie's great moments. I was like, yes, but I know where it leads to. You have some things like that, but I think when I read this, I hadn't read something like a First Law or a Song of Ice and Fire yet, where I had just gotten used to big characters dying. Now, like I said, I was expecting it because I thought that was the whole nature of the story. It was going to be rolling 1v1 at the end, So I expected, but it didn't make it any easier. So I hadn't read anything up to that point where I'd had, a big tight knit group like that, and all of them were going to die. It was tough for me, but on this reread, I don't want to say I've become desensitized to it. It's just like, I'm like, oh, that's great. It's bloody brilliant. I love the way they set that up. I look at it more like that now than I do just getting like overly emotional about it. So I don't know. I'll find out, like I said, this year or early 2023 when I finish book 6 and 7 again.
Here's a random one for you guys. I agree with True Random Gamer here. That's a great observation. Was there a little bit of an attraction thing going on between Roland and Susanna at times, that beyond father relationship there? Was there potential there? I felt like there was some tension at times.
No, not for me, and I'm insulted that you would say so.
Sorry, Eddie. Sorry, Eddie.
I never
Sorry,
got
Eddie.
that. No.
Yeah, I never got that.
Okay.
Although it was interesting now that you mention it, that Ka just so happened to make it so that it was Roland's seed that was implanted in Susan by the demon.
Yeah.
So that's but yeah, I didn't feel any sparks or like romantic tension between them, but it does make for an interesting. I wonder why why Ka had that in mind, because
Mhm.
yeah,
Hey,
that
maybe on a different path they were involved.
maybe so. Yeah, that's a good point, Mike. Yeah.
Poor Eddie was just cracking jokes on the side.
I think that the closest I think it ever got is
Jokes.
when I was talking about where Susanna has to fend off the horny demon. And she's like, what if
That was
it has
weird.
both boy and girl parts? And then Roland was like, I guess we'll take them together. That's about the closest I ever got in sexual attraction between the two. So.
I always felt like they were just like, we got to do what we got to do, kind of
We'll
thing.
just do what needs to be done.
Yeah.
People of action.
Ercy, you didn't feel like there was anything, maybe not too like overt, but there was a kind of, I mean, they do kiss a couple times.
Yeah.
And they're the last two together. Obviously it's primarily a paternal relationship with him and her, but
Yeah, I felt like there was definitely a great mutual respect for one another and what they're capable of doing. I felt like they knew, like, even when he was like, you're gonna be the one with the arisas, right? Like this is what you're gonna do. Like there was so much respect for each other. Right?
Perfectly timed, Andrew. Perfectly timed.
Great timing.
Andrew has great timing in general. I mean, he's just. Did I
Great. But yeah, like it was just like I felt like they had this really great respect towards each other.
yeah.
And so whenever they had those moments where they were talking to each other and being really like, I guess Susanna being real honest with Roland and like being able to be head on with him and have this relationship where she can kind of confide in him and tell him what's real and what she's feeling. I think that's where their love kind of not in like a romantic way. It's more like it was very platonic for me because she was always, no matter what, she was always like, Eddie, that's my man.
I think
Like-
Philip was just shipping these two. I think that's what it is. He's writing a little fan fiction in his head here.
Just floating the idea. Just floating the idea.
Madison had a good idea.
Yeah.
Maybe it was the other sides. One of the
Yes.
other personalities. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He likes them tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, she loves old gray meat, right? Little wax candles, whatever the fuck she calls them.
Oh yeah, but with the mayor, oh yeah, that was, I know, Andrew. I know.
Andrew, that's something that King will do well. He will make you quite uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't talk much about Mordred. And of course, there's another Arthurian direct reference.
Obviously.
But his initial entrance into the world was basically one of the grossest things ever. You just come out and eat your own mommy. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was insane. That was
was.
crazy. That was really, I felt like that was really cool though. Like,
Yeah.
when he came out like that, and because she knew that there was going to be some kind of demon, like something wrong with this baby. And then even with her and the mom, like the battle between Susanna and what was her name again? I keep forgetting her name.
Mia.
Yeah, Mia. And even like their tension with each other, like the need for being a mom and how detached Susanna was. She was like, I'm not pregnant. That's not me. But then having that other side of her, Mia, being like, this is my baby. Like, I will do anything for this baby to have this baby. And Susanna, you can have the baby. I don't care. Like, I don't want this baby. Like, you can have it. I don't care. Like, that was really interesting. I feel like that anytime that you see, like, like I'm a mom. So anytime that like anything that references like motherhood and stuff, I get really drawn into that and just seeing how he would write that relationship. And I just thought that was like split that between Mia and Susanna. I thought that was really interesting that he was able to kind of do that.
It was kind of a sad moment though for Mia when she was like all about, oh, my baby, he's so beautiful. And then he goes and eats her.
And he eats her. He's like sucks her dry. She's just like a husk.
Yeah. That's such
It was really great visuals too, because even when like they touched her and she kind of evaporated into dust, I thought that was like the way that he wrote that was like visually, like I saw it in my head, and I thought that was really great.
Yeah. Was Mordred's demise, like the Crimson King's, a bit of a letdown for any of you?
Well, I for me, I like that Oi had a really big part of that.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah. Like, if anything, that was great for Oi. Like, yeah, it's a gunshot, but I kind of feel like that led into Oi kind of shining there. But I did have a hard time with it being like Mordred was so hell-bent on getting to Roland and having that. There was so much written about that. And then for that confrontation between him and Roland to be that quick, I wanted it a little drawn out, but I mean the book was already like 700, 800 pages.
I'll be honest, I don't remember, Philip, exactly how Mordred goes out. I was so pissed about Randall Flagg that I don't even remember.
Oh, so just to remind you, it's just Oi. Basically, Mordred is gonna ambush them because poor Roland, he cannot stay awake. And he just finally succumbs, and that's Mordred's moment. But Oi is waiting there, and Oi attacks Mordred, bites him, gets a hold of him, and of course Mordred flings Oi off him and impales him on a dead tree.
Yeah,
and then
I remember how he dies though.
Roland just shoots. He shoots him. Boom. And then that's it. Mordred's dead.
A series where you got people with guns and someone dies by getting shot. It actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So that's what happens to Mordred.
And it is kind of poetic since the gun is, after all, made from the metal of Excalibur. So it's fitting that he died by a gunshot wound from that gun. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, I feel like we've had a pretty decent conversation here on some of the weirder elements in here. And there's just stuff that nobody else has even come close to. The whole thing with Susanna and Mia, for example. I'm thinking, I've never seen anything quite like this ever before, right? It's just so. King's willingness to do so many weird things in here. And yet it all worked together for me pretty well. It was an incredible journey. I felt like he imbued this whole thing with a sense of spirituality, where this idea of trying to reach it's like very much like the quest for the Grail, right? And I don't mean Monty Python's version. I mean the quest for the Grail, some purpose, some meaning to life. Does the universe have any meaning to it at all? And in the end, maybe you don't actually find out, but it's the quest to get there that gives it meaning, right?
Right.
Yeah, definitely took a lot of things that he was into, some poetry, some Tolkien, some Wizard of Oz, maybe some Sergio Leone's Man with No Names. I'll just throw this all in here and add some horror stuff to it.
Yeah. Sprinkle a little Harry Potter in there. We're good.
Yep. Star Wars.
I didn't remember that when I was reading Wolves of Kal. I was like, "You really talking about Harry Potter in this?" Well,
yeah, like lightsabers.
Yeah. Dr. Doom with lightsabers. Yeah.
Dr. Doom. Star Wars.
A little bit of Marvel in there. Yeah.
All of it. Just go for it, man. Do it.
I love the little nod to the Palantir from Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. He's got it all, and in the process too, I feel like he gives us these just undying, beautiful characters, very complex. I even felt bad for someone like Mordred at moments because he is ostracized, he is excluded, and he is kind of like he doesn't have a ka-tet. And so that's one reason why he's bitter and he's angry and he wants to just, he wants to be part of them. He's kind of listening in, and he's like staying out of the conflict when they go and they kill the low men and the others that are, guarding the breakers and all that. He stays out of that, and he just wants to be loved. Poor Mordred.
Philip, he's not going to hear any of your slander on like baby spider demons. He's not having it. No. Me, I'm like, kill it with fire,
But he was such an interesting little villain, though. Like,
good point here, he kills his son too, because Mordred is his son.
Yeah.
He also performs abortions with those guns. Watch out.
Yeah.
Multi-purpose. That's one thing. If you read Gunslinger and you get past that part, I think you know what you're in for, really.
Yeah.
Wow, he's doing an abortion with a gun. Okay. Yeah. So I think that's when you're like, okay, this is different. No. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. It was just the fact that he was able to throw in the genre bending was ridiculous. Like, I've never seen anyone do anything like that.
Yeah, you see like that little table where it talks about, over here's fantasy, here's sci-fi, here's horror, and has like all the things in between. I'm like, you just circled the whole thing and put that right in the middle. Yeah.
Throw a little romance in there.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's the trippiest thing, and yeah, it can be incredibly physical and gross, and just very, like body fluids all over the place, from pus to blood to you name it. He's got it all, but he also has this incredibly spiritual thing. He really captures, I think, that sense of yearning with the rose and the tower and the song of the rose, and that sense of that there's some kind of meaning around the corner we can't quite grasp, right? That makes life meaningful and beautiful. And it's that quest, I think, that he puts us on that makes us long for that. And maybe it's the longing that matters, not that we actually attain that goal.
I mean, there's even like this.
Kick us off. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ercy.
Oh no, go ahead. I was going to say, even like
tell
this...
Philip that I appreciate that you enjoyed this series, because when I recommend this series to people, I know deep down they're probably not going to like it. It's not for everybody, especially refined men of culture such as yourself. They're usually like, oh, Stephen King, So seeing that you actually, when somebody starts reading it and they don't enjoy it, it breaks my heart a little bit. I get it. Same with Dune. I know it's not going to work for everybody. So seeing that you did enjoy it this much, you even liked the parts that I really didn't particularly care for. I mean, it's great for me as a fan of the series and a fan of what you do. It's been really fun watching you do this. I really appreciate you really diving deep into it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. Yeah, you're one of the persons that got me to read this series. So it's your fault, whatever happened.
You are welcome.
Well, even like everyone's reactions to it, like how in the beginning when we were talking about like our favorites, and like everyone, even in the comments, they were just so different. Everyone's reactions to it, like, this one's my favorite. No, Wolves of the Collar. No, Gunslinger is my favorite. No, Dark Tower is my favorite.
Yeah,
like everyone has their own ranking to it, and I think that's just so interesting that we can like all read the same thing and have so many different thoughts and so many different opinions on it. I that's wild to me.
It is.
Usually like when you read a series, people are always just like, oh my God, the last book of the series is the best one, or no, this is usually it's like the first or the last book. And this one is just all over the place and for everyone. And this is crazy.
It is crazy. That is a good word to sum it up, I think.
Yeah, it really is.
Why you should read Dark Tower. It's crazy. That would have been a much quicker video.
It's weird. Yeah. It's crazy.
And also ask people, do you like fondue? If you like fondue, you'll probably like the Dark Tower because there's just a bunch of stuff thrown in there.
I love it. Yeah. Any other final thoughts, guys, before we sign off? And I'd like to thank the three of you for being a great ka-tet. And of course, we're going to include our buddy who couldn't be here. And I was just kidding earlier about her. She did not send me a mean email or anything like that. But we do miss Sarah, and hope that everything goes well with her. And she's fine, by the way. She's had parental duties and stuff to attend to. But thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody in the chat. It has been lovely. Thank you for all your awesome comments. I'm sorry I couldn't get to every single one of them, but I feel like you guys added a lot of great elements to this discussion. There's just so much to cover in this series. This series has just got everything, I think, in it. So it's got a little bit of everything. So thank you so much, everybody. And long days and pleasant nights.
I say thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
May you have twice as
much
many.
Appreciated, Philip. Thank you. I'm honored to be on this with all of you guys. You guys will always be my ka-tet.
All right. Take care, everybody.
You too. Take care.